A lot of the appeal of the original Nintendo Entertainment System was the variety in the types of games it boasted. This system did a lot of genres well, and even trailblazed a number of them which we love today. And no, that is not a nod to the generic action series. And while there were plenty of the aforementioned action-style games, which let you punch or shoot your problems away to your heart's content, there were a number of puzzle-themed games which challenged your mind to find the solutions to the problems which the game presented you. I'm Tony with Let's Play with Brigands, and today I'll be counting down the top 10 best NES puzzle games of all time. Number 10. Battle Chess. I'd call Battle Chess more of a puzzle game than a sports game, but semantics aside, this game made that sometimes intimidating and boring activity of chess much more digestible to a kid. It's chess, but with the added fun of bloody animations that you always imagined taking place when one piece would take another. There were dozens of different animations, and you'd go out of your way when you didn't actually care about winning, just to sacrifice certain pieces so you could see some of the more elaborate animations. There were even some nods to pop culture, such as the knight getting dismembered by another knight, a la Monty Python's Holy Grail. And maybe it's not the testimony of the century, but Battle Chess is still my go-to when I want a game of video chess. Number 9. Old Cubicle. Old Cubicle is one of the games I discovered some 15 years after it came out, but a friend and I played it pretty relentlessly at the time, so it has a special place in my heart. It plays kind of like The Adventures of Lolo, in that it's another action puzzle game. Kickle has to collect tokens to unlock the next level, and he can also freeze enemies and manipulate them to reach otherwise inaccessible areas. But unlike Lolo, however, there are a number of fun boss battles at the end of each world group as well, making it much more of a puzzle action combo. It's fun working to figure out how to beat each level, and it's also decently long, as it will take you at least a couple hours even if you know what you're doing. All in all, a challenging action puzzle game. Number 8. Lemmings. Those darn Lemmings were everywhere in the early 90s, and the NES was no exception. This extremely popular puzzle platformer gave you a finite number of lemmings to control, which you had to guide safely through a number of dangerous obstacles by assigning them various tasks and abilities, from wall climbers to the many lemmings left behind blockers and the suicidal bombers. They know what they signed up for. The number of lemmings you had at the start of each stage varied wildly, begging the question, just what the hell were those lemmings up to in between stages? Most of the puzzles were challenging because there was typically an increasingly larger percentage of lemmings which had to survive and reach the end of the level to beat it. Either that, or in some cases, the Lemmings government limited the number of available jobs to your lemmings, so you had to give out jobs judiciously and conservatively. If you ask me, Lemmings warrants a new title with a flashier graphical touch, as it's a formula which holds up even today. Number 7. Wait for it. Anticipation. At number 7, Anticipation is a kind of Pictionary meets Trivial Pursuit puzzle game, and makes for one of the more interesting, if not typically overlooked titles for the NES. Up to 4 human or computer players each control a game piece on a board made up of different color spaces. Each space brings up a Pictionary-like puzzle, where a pen slowly draws out an object, and the first person to recognize what it's drawing can buzz in and try to solve it. Correctly guessing the puzzle nets the player whatever color was on that space, and completing a set of all 4 colors transports the player to the next level. The first player to complete all the levels is crowned champion. Allowing for up to 4 players using just 2 controllers, it's also one of the more fun multiplayer titles to pull out, even for anyone who doesn't like video games. Now that comes with the caveat that there are only a certain number of puzzles, so after a few plays of the game, you'll begin to quickly recognize what the pen is drawing sooner than later, meaning anyone who meets that criteria, i.e. me, won't be a lot of fun to play with. Otherwise, it's a great time. Number 6. Warios Woods. Warios Woods is a falling piece style puzzle game with a twist. Instead of having a godlike control over the pieces, you play as Toad, who had to roll up his sleeves and put in the work himself to move the pieces around. This added another element of a challenge, as you not only had to have the pieces you needed, but you had to have the time and space to move them where they needed to be. Fortunately, as we learned in Super Mario Bros. 2, Toad has an affinity and skill set for picking up and moving things around, making him invaluable both in this game as well as on moving days in the Mushroom Kingdom. The point of this game is to clear lines of monsters using color-coded bombs. Different enemies require different ways of clearing them out, with some only to be cleared out diagonally and some taking multiple bombs to fully eradicate them. I wasn't born with the Warios Woods gene. As such, I personally find this to be one of the more challenging puzzle games for the NES because you have to take a lot more physics into account in terms of both clearing lines as well as situating and moving Toad around with and without the weight of a bomb. Warios Woods didn't get a whole lot of attention because it was literally the last licensed game to be released for the NES before attention turned exclusively to the SNES. But it's still a clever concept for a puzzle game which some contemporary games would borrow from for years to come. Number 5. Yoshi. Yoshi is one of those somewhat hidden gems which frequently flies under the radar when it comes to the great NES puzzle games, but it's as fun as they come and a personal favorite of mine. The concept is simple. Clear lines of monsters from the top down either by matching two of the same piece or by putting them on the bottom half of a Yoshi egg and sandwiching everything within it closed with a top half. New pieces drop down from the top, but you can flip two of the columns on the ground at a time to orient pieces where you need them to create matches or Yoshi egg sandwiches. While Warios Woods involves a lot more mental juggling with a lot more to account for, Yoshi is based on making quick, simple decisions to orient pieces where you need them, and either making matches or moving them around to areas where you have space. It's also a very satisfying puzzle game, as you create huge sandwiches out of Yoshi eggs to clear multiple pieces at once and give yourself some breathing room when you're up against the wall. While Yoshi's Cookie is likely the much more well-known Yoshi-associated puzzle game, the lesser-known and just straight-up Yoshi definitely deserves your attention if you're not familiar with it. Number 4. Adventures of Lolo. Adventures of Lolo is a novel live-action puzzle game in which you're a fuzzy little blue critter who is damned to walk the earth without a mouth or a nose, searching for his, you guessed it, girlfriend. Lolo had to manipulate his surroundings in order to collect heart tokens and unlock the next area, evading or defeating a number of interesting enemies along the way. Plus, the music encourages you to complete each level and the game as quickly as possible to avoid going insane. It was a rewarding experience figuring out the trick to each level, many of which had only one specific solution in which you had to do everything exactly right to unlock the next one. The game deservedly yielded a couple of sequels which served up more of the same, with the exception being in the third one that you could use Lolo to solve a number of puzzles you couldn't do on your own. Speaking of which, this game would have benefited from the option to add a second player to help solve puzzles, but the original Lolo serves as a novel puzzle game concept which can still challenge players today. Number 3. Yoshi's Cookie. Cookies in video games? Some ideas are just a slam dunk, and Yoshi's Cookie from Nintendo was a deliciously solid puzzle game outing. Mario dons a chef hat in this game. You know, as a quick aside, Mario sure seems to hold down a lot of side jobs, from referee, pharmacist/doctor, and now here's a baker. I guess being arguably the most recognizable video game star of all time doesn't pay quite as much as one might think. But yeah, Mario controls a cookie manipulation machine in order to create and subsequently clear rows of the same cookie, presumably to then package these cookies for distribution all across the Mushroom Kingdom. Goomba loves the diamond ones, by the way. Speaking of which, everyone had a favorite. Mine was probably the flower one with the orangey pink center. They always just looked the most delicious to me. You had to clear lines of cookies before Nabisco or Pepperidge Farms, or more likely those damn Keebler elves pumped in too many at once and you couldn't keep up with demand. It's a simple line clearing game which demands top-notch hand-eye coordination which, like the aforementioned plain and simple Yoshi, I really enjoy. It's 2-player, so you can pit your cookie orienting skills to the test against a friend, or you can set your preferred difficulty against the computer. This was one of the earliest games featuring Yoshi, though it's a bit of a slight in this game as his main appearance is through his titular cookie, which acts as a wildcard cookie of sorts, clearing an otherwise complete line. Now I'm jonesing for a snack. Man, if only these list videos were catered. Number 2. Tetris. Is there anything as addictive as Tetris when it comes to puzzle games? No? Then why the hell's it number 2? Tetris has been ported to record-setting numbers of platforms, and its entry on the NES is one of the earliest and most solid. What can I say about this game that you don't already know? I mean, it's Tetris on the NES. That's why it worked. You had a number of blocks given to you at random, which you then had to drop and create complete horizontal lines out of. This game didn't have all the bells and whistles of later Tetris iterations, such as holding or swapping out a piece on demand, or tapping up to instantly drop a block to save you time and better put you in the flow. But the basic concept was there, and it was colorfully vibrant on the NES. And the music! Who doesn't remember the 3 tracks you could choose from? From the classic Swan Lake first, the second stereotypical Russian music, which I assumed at the time was all that Russian people listened to, just blaring out from PA systems all around the clock in town squares, and my personal favorite, the relaxing, underwater vibe-giving third option. A nice detail was each track would speed up and consequently become more dramatic the closer to the top your blocks were stacked, turning the otherwise relaxing third music option into a cacophony of impending pants crapping. Now there's an image. But while there's not really any kind of plot in terms of why exactly we have been charged with the task of clearing lines, not to mention our sanity, throughout all eternity, every several levels cleared they throw in some nice cutscenes to keep you motivated with things which kids presumably enjoyed, such as rockets blasting off. Again, what more can I say? It's Tetris, for the NES! Now before we reveal the top NES puzzle game of all time, let's take a look at a few honorable mentions which didn't quite make the cut. Number 1. Dr. Mario. Dr. Mario takes the top spot for ticking all the boxes. It's a wholly original concept, is a fantastic 2-player outing, has a great soundtrack, and, like many prescription drugs, it's incredibly addictive. We're clearing lines one final time, and this time in multiples of 4, or, if you can manage it, 5. As I said in my Let's Play of it, and alluded to earlier in this list, in this game, Mario has faked a medical license and is practicing medicine illegally. And, like most doctors, his solution to any kind of problem is just to throw a bunch of drugs at it. Literally in this case. That being said, we are dealing with literal, by which I mean fictional, germs. And gosh aren't they cute, just dancing away and throwing up hand signs. The soundtrack has a few options. All classics which you recognize if you heard them to make eradicating the different diseases a pure joy. And, like Tetris, this game also features a number of nice miniature cutscenes, showing the virus trio kicking it in a tree to help keep you motivated in single-player mode. Conversely, you can play against a friend in versus mode to see who can more efficiently stave off a pandemic. Alright, there you have it, my picks for the top 10 best NES puzzle games of all time. Why not let me know exactly how wrong I am in the comments section below? And make sure to subscribe to Let's Play with Brigands for more top 10 lists, Let's Plays, live streaming, and of course, fun times.